She came home to grab her laptop, but heard her stepmother's voice in her bedroom with her fiancé. She did nothing, just waited for the right moment, and in the middle of a family dinner, she turned on the living room TV. What appeared on the screen made their world collapse. The walls of that house always seemed to whisper secrets, but Emma never imagined the darkest one would be hiding in her own bedroom, waiting for an unexpected return to tear her world apart. If it hadn't been for a forgotten laptop, she might still be clinging to the comfortable lie she called happiness. That Monday morning started like any other, with the pale September light filtering through the blinds and the scent of fresh coffee wafting up the stairs of their Seattle home. The night before had been a dream. The house, usually a quiet retreat, still buzzed with the warmth of an intimate celebration. They'd toasted Emma's engagement to Ryan. Her father, David, with his familiar reserved smile, had raised a glass to their future, his eyes soft with genuine joy. Her stepmother, Karen, had wrapped her in a warm hug that, at the time, felt like pure affection. Even her younger stepsister, Lily, usually lost in her teenage world of earbuds and TikTok, had joined in the festivities. For the first time in years, Emma felt like every piece of her life was falling into place, a near-divine alignment. The next morning, routine took over, sweeping away the party's glow. Lily rushed out for school, muttering about a chemistry test. David, always the earliest to leave, kissed Emma's forehead and told her to drive safely, as he always did. Emma left soon after, her mind already on the big presentation at the tech startup where she worked. She left Ryan asleep, tangled in her sheets, a picture of calm and love. He deserved the rest. The party had stretched late into the night. "See you later, babe," she whispered, closing the bedroom door with a tenderness that felt almost sacred, like she was guarding something precious. Seattle's traffic swallowed her up. She turned on the radio, humming along to a pop song, her thoughts on spreadsheets and pitch decks. It was halfway across town, stuck in a gridlock near Pike Place, that panic hit like a lightning bolt. A cold sweat broke out. The laptop. It was sitting on her desk in her bedroom, holding the entire presentation she'd spent a week perfecting. Without it, her meeting would be a disaster. Cursing under her breath, Emma made a risky U-turn, ignoring the angry honk of a delivery truck. She just needed 5 minutes. Dart in, grab the laptop and get out. No one would even notice. David was at his downtown office, Lily at school. Karen, her stepmother, usually spent mornings at her pottery studio in the backyard shed. And Ryan would be sleeping off the late night. She parked crookedly in the driveway, keys already in hand, heart pounding. The house was quiet, just as she expected. She took the stairs 2 at a time, fueled by urgency. But at the top, in the hallway leading to her room, something stopped her cold. Not a loud noise, but a soft murmur seeping through the silence. Laughter, muffled, intimate, slipping under the door she'd closed so carefully an hour earlier. Confusion hit first. Was Ryan awake watching TV? But the sound was unmistakably human. One voice she knew instantly, Ryan's, smooth and warm, the voice that had promised her forever just last night. But there was another, a low, husky female laugh that sent a primal shiver down her spine. It couldn't be. Her mind recoiled from the truth. It was Karen. What was her stepmother doing in her bedroom with her fiancé? The air grew thick, hard to breathe. Her feet, so quick moments before, felt glued to the hardwood floor. The logical move was to barge in, demand answers, confront the impossible. But a darker instinct, fear mixed with morbid curiosity, held her back. She pressed herself against the cold wall, barely breathing, a ghost in her own home. She had to listen. She had to understand what was happening in the space she called hers. And there, in that silent hallway, Emma's world began to crumble, word by word, laugh by laugh. The air in the hallway turned thin, each breath laced with the poison of betrayal seeping into her veins. Emma stood frozen, a statue carved by shock, the pulse in her ears nearly drowning out the voices from her room. The wooden door, once a shield of privacy, was now a flimsy barrier to a monstrous truth. Every second spent listening was a chisel to her soul, carving a pain she never thought possible. The urgent meeting faded from her mind. "You're something else," Ryan's voice came, laced with a conspiratorial chuckle she knew too well, now twisted into something grotesque. "I didn't think you'd show up today." Karen's reply was sultry, dripping with collusion, a chilling melody that turned Emma's stomach. "And miss seeing you. David's at work, Lily's at school, and little Miss Perfect. Oh, Emma's offered her big job, so proud of her perfect little life." Little Miss Perfect. The words slammed into Emma, ricocheting like shrapnel. That's how they saw her. The fiancée, the stepdaughter. The fool who made their charade possible. Her legs buckled, and she leaned harder against the wall to keep from collapsing. Tears stung her eyes, but she swallowed them. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not now. Now she was all ears. "She doesn't suspect a thing, does she?" Karen went on, and Emma could almost see the smug smile on her lips. "Sometimes I almost feel bad. The way she looks at you like you hung the moon. It's pathetic, but it's useful. For now. Feel bad." "I don't feel a damn thing," Ryan said, his voice cold, stripped of the warmth that had wrapped around Emma the night before. "She's the ticket, Karen. The ticket to everything we want. Her dad worships her. And it's his money we're after." The air left Emma's lungs in a silent gasp. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a calculated heist. They weren't just betraying her trust. They were plotting to dismantle her family, to steal the wealth her father had built over decades. Speaking of which, Karen's tone shifted, more serious now. "He's almost there. I've been dropping hints about his health, how it'd be safer if the assets were in my name to avoid probate issues if something happens. I mentioned some old legal troubles that could resurface. He's smart, but losing his first wife left him raw. He trusts me." "And when he signs it over?" Ryan asked, greed pulsing in his voice. "When he signs, darling, we wait a bit. Let things settle. Then we vanish. A long trip, just you and me. We leave little Miss Perfect and her daddy to pick up the pieces." The sound of a loud kiss, followed by more laughter, was the final blow. Something inside Emma shattered for good. The starry-eyed girl who'd left the house that morning died in that hallway. In her place rose a woman forged in betrayal, cold and wounded but alive with a silent fury, hotter than any love she'd ever felt. She couldn't storm in. They'd deny it, call her paranoid, jealous. Karen would play the victim, the offended stepmother. Ryan would accuse her of making it up. Without proof, she'd be the villain. And she knew with a sickening certainty who her father would believe first. He loved Karen. He saw Ryan as his daughter's future. With a discipline she didn't know she had, Emma backed away. Her steps were slow, deliberate, like a wounded animal retreating from a trap. Each move was a triumph over the urge to scream, to pound on the door. She descended the stairs as quietly as she'd climbed them. But this silence wasn't urgency. It was purpose. At the front door, she paused, hand on the knob. She glanced at the living room, at the framed photo on the mantel. Her, David, Karen, and Lily, smiling at a cabin in the Cascades. A framed lie, a mockery of happiness. Jaw clenched, she stepped out into the harsh daylight. In her car, the world vanished. She didn't see the other cars, didn't hear the horns, didn't answer the buzzing phone calls from her boss. All that existed was the searing pain in her chest and their voices echoing in her head. Little Miss Perfect, pathetic, the ticket. The tears she'd held back came, not as grief, but as torrents of rage and humiliation. She sobbed, her body shaking, the sound muffled by the car's confines. She cried for the loss of love, the betrayal of family, the theft of her innocence. But amid the chaos, a resolve took shape. They'd underestimated her, thought her weak, naive. They saw her as a pawn in their filthy game. But they didn't know the strength she'd inherited from her father, the grit from her late mother. They'd lit a fire in her, and it wouldn't consume her. It would forge her. The sobbing stopped. Emma wiped her face with the back of her hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. Shock turned to strategy. Pain became fuel. She wasn't the victim frozen in the hallway anymore. She was a betrayed daughter, but not broken. She grabbed her phone, hands still trembling but fingers steady. Ignoring her boss's missed calls, She opened the browser and typed the words that would seal her betrayer's fate. Family Law Attorney Fraud Seattle. The first result was Rachel Harper, a renowned lawyer known for her ruthless handling of emotional and financial fraud cases. Articles praised her as a fierce advocate for the deceived. She was exactly who Emma needed, not a counselor, but a warrior for the battle ahead. She dialed the number. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Harper Law Office. Good morning. Emma took a deep breath, her voice steadier than she expected. My name is Emma. I need an urgent meeting with Ms. Harper. It's a matter of extreme importance. She wasn't little Miss Perfect anymore. She was the woman who came home for a laptop and found her purpose instead. The hunt had begun. Rachel Harper's office was a haven of order in the storm that had engulfed Emma's life. Tucked in a sleek high-rise in downtown Seattle, the space was all clean lines, dark wood, and modern art that exuded control and authority. It was the opposite of the chaos tearing Emma apart. She sat in a plush leather chair, clutching her purse, feeling out of place despite her effort to appear composed. Rachel Harper entered moments later. In her 50s, with neatly styled silver hair and eyes that seemed to cut through facades, she carried an air of quiet power. She didn't smile, just gave a curt nod and sat across from Emma, radiating competence that was both daunting and reassuring. Ms. Emma, she said, her voice even and measured. My assistant said this was urgent and squeezed you in. I'm listening. Facing that formidable presence, Emma's rehearsed words felt inadequate. She took a breath, forcing herself to find the thread of her story. Her voice wavered at first but grew stronger as she recounted the engagement, the joyful night before, the forgotten laptop, the return home. When she described what she overheard through the door, her voice held steady. She repeated Ryan and Karen's cold, calculated words with surgical precision. Little Miss Perfect, pathetic the ticket. When he signs, we vanish. Rachel listened in complete silence, her gaze locked on Emma, not interrupting once. She showed no shock or pity, just intense focus like a chess master studying a complex board. When Emma finished, the room's silence was thick with the story's ugliness. I see, Rachel said at last, leaning forward slightly. What you're describing isn't just personal betrayal. It's a calculated financial scam, using emotional manipulation as a weapon. They exploited your trust and your father's love to set the stage for their crime. She paused, assessing the young woman before her. You were smart not to confront them. It would have been your word against theirs. And in family disputes, truth rarely wins without hard evidence. They'd have painted you as the jealous, unstable fiancé. Hearing her instincts validated brought Emma a sliver of relief. What do I do now? She asked, her voice heavy with the weight of the question. My dad. He needs to know. But how do I tell him? He loves Karen. He trusts Ryan. This will break him. The truth, painful as it is a medicine that must be given carefully but given nonetheless, Rachel advised. Your father is the primary target of their financial scheme. He needs to be your ally, not a barrier. But you can't just go to him with a story. You need a strategy. Rachel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Your father's a businessman, right? Built a fortune. Men like him respond to logic, to facts. Your pain will move him, but a manipulator's seeds of doubt can be strong. You need to tell him exactly what you heard. Don't embellish, don't interpret. Just the facts. Watch his reaction. He may doubt you, even get angry. That's natural. But you'll plant the seed of suspicion. Mention the details, the transfer of assets, the health excuse. Those might ring bells from conversations he's had with Karen. Facing her father felt almost as terrifying as the betrayal itself. David was her rock, her hero. Bringing him a truth that would hurt him felt cruel. But Rachel was right. It had to be done. That night, Emma found her father in his home office, poring over financial reports. The house was quiet. Karen was out at a book club, a stroke of luck Emma silently thanked. Ryan had called earlier, his voice dripping with fake concern. Babe, you've been AWOL all day. Everything okay? Each word burned like acid. She'd mumbled something about a work crisis, her voice eerily calm. Dad, she said from the doorway. David looked up, a tired smile on his face. "Hey, sweetheart. Rough day. We need to talk," she said, her tone so serious he set down his pen and gave her his full attention. She stepped inside and sat across from him, in the same chair where she'd once shown him her report cards as a kid. She told him everything, her voice steady, hands clasped to hide their trembling. She watched his face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, the anger she'd dreaded. "Emma, that's a hell of an accusation," he said, shaking his head. "Karen? Ryan? They wouldn't do that. You must have misheard." "I heard what I heard, Dad," she pressed, her voice breaking for the first time. "They called me Little Miss Perfect. They talked about getting you to transfer the assets, using your health as an excuse. Has she mentioned anything like that to you?" David went quiet. His gaze drifted, lost in thought. Emma saw the gears turning, memories of recent conversations surfacing. He recalled Karen's offhand remarks about his blood pressure, her suggestion to get their affairs in order. At the time, they'd seemed like a caring wife's concerns. Now, in the light of Emma's words, they took on a sinister hue. The defensive anger in his face began to fade, replaced by doubt and pain. He looked at his daughter, at the raw anguish in her eyes, the same anguish he'd seen when her mother died. This wasn't jealousy. This was real. "They could deny it all," he said, his voice hoarse. "It'd be their word against yours. They could turn it around on you." "I know," Emma replied, feeling a spark of hope. He wasn't dismissing her. He was starting to see. "That's why I met with a lawyer today, Rachel Harper. She said we need solid proof and she has a plan." The mention of the lawyer seemed to ground David. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. It was a legal battlefield. His businessman's mind took over, pushing past the pain of a betrayed husband and father. "A plan?" he asked, his interest piqued. "A trap," Emma corrected, the word sharp and cold on her lips. "Rachel said their greed makes them predictable. If they think their plan's working, they'll get sloppy. Dad, we're going to give them what they want, or make them think they're getting it." In that moment, in the quiet of the office, their bond shifted forever. They weren't just father and daughter. They were allies, united by a devastating betrayal, but determined to fight together. The plan took shape, an intricate web of deception and surveillance meant to expose the truth and protect what was theirs. The pain was still raw, a gaping wound in both their hearts, but now there was purpose, a dark, unyielding purpose. The hunt wasn't just Emma's anymore, it was theirs. The days that followed were a grueling test of self-control for Emma and David. Every moment in that house was a performance. Emma had to smile at Karen, accept her fake hugs, and listen to her wedding planning advice, while the image of her stepmother with her fiancé seared her mind. The hardest part was facing Ryan. He sought her out with manufactured sweetness, kissing her with lips that had touched Karen's, talking about their future, a future he planned to build on her family's ruins. Each affectionate gesture was a knife, and Emma had to take it with a smile, feigning the adoration they mocked. It was poison she swallowed daily, and the only thing keeping her from breaking was the promise of retribution. While Emma played her part, David and Rachel Harper worked behind the scenes, building the trap. The strategy was elegantly brutal: speed up the con artist's plan, make them believe victory was near. Greed, as Rachel predicted, would be their downfall. David made the first move. At dinner, a few nights after the revelation, he clutched his chest, feigning a twinge of pain. Karen rushed to his side, her face a perfect mask of concern. "David, what's wrong? You look pale." He waved her off, saying it was just stress, but the seed was planted. Over the next few days, he acted like a man feeling his mortality. He left insurance policies on the table, asked vague questions about wills, and finally, in a staged conversation, told Karen, "You're right, honey. I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe it's time to get things in order, to protect you and the girls. Your idea about transferring some assets to your name, I think it's the smart move." Karen's eyes gleamed with barely concealed triumph, quickly masked by a look of tender gratitude. "Oh, David, I just want you to have peace of mind." The trap's gears began to turn. Karen, drunk on her perceived success, grew careless. Her secret meetings with Ryan, once hushed and cautious, became bolder and more frequent. That's exactly what Emma and David were counting on. Under Rachel's guidance, a security expert was brought in. One afternoon, when the house was empty, he installed tiny microphones and cameras in Emma's bedroom. The devices were cutting-edge, hidden in everyday objects: a smoke detector, a phone charger, the digital clock by her bed. Her sanctuary, defiled by betrayal, was now a recording studio ready to capture the truth in high definition. Watching them taint her space again would be torture, but it was the price of undeniable proof. With the surveillance in place, the final phase began. They needed to recreate the conditions of that fateful morning. The excuse was another family dinner, a chance to bring everyone closer after David's health scare. Ryan, of course, was the guest of honor. During dinner, he held Emma's hand under the table while exchanging knowing glances with Karen over it. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Emma wondered how she'd missed it before. The next morning played out like a grim rerun. Lily left for school. David kissed Karen goodbye, promising to call his lawyer about the transfer. Emma announced a day full of off-site meetings. Before leaving, bag slung over her shoulder, she kissed Ryan, still in bed, and took one last look at her room. With a discreet tap on her phone, she activated the live feed from the hidden camera, a window into the hell about to unfold. The picture was sharp, the audio crystal clear. The stage was set. Instead of heading to work, Emma drove to Rachel Harper's office, where David was waiting. Her heart raced with a mix of anxiety, fear, and a dark thirst for confirmation. In the office, a large monitor was ready. With a nod from Rachel, Emma connected her phone, and her bedroom filled the screen. The three sat in silence, staring at the empty room. The wait was excruciating. Then the door opened. Karen slipped in, glancing down the hall before shutting it. She thought she was alone. Seconds later, the bathroom door opened, and Ryan stepped out, shirtless, a smug grin on his face. In the law office, the air grew heavy. David's breath hitched, his face a mask of barely contained rage. Emma felt tears rising but dug her nails into her palms to hold them back. On the screen, Ryan pulled Karen into a long, hungry kiss. They laughed, their intimacy undeniable and revolting. "He bought it all," Karen whispered, running her hands over Ryan's chest. "The old man's ready to sign the papers. He actually thinks I'm worried about his health." "And the little princess," Ryan sneered. "Off at her big important job. Of course, all dedicated. She has no idea her biggest project is me taking everything she's got," Karen replied, and they burst into laughter. They collapsed onto Emma's bed, the same bed where she'd dreamed of a future with Ryan. They planned their escape, maybe Miami, maybe the Caribbean. They mocked Emma's naivety, David's devotion to Karen. The peak of their cruelty came when Karen looked straight at the hidden camera in the clock, unaware of her audience. "Soon, darling, all of this," she said, gesturing to the room, the house, "will just be a memory. And all his money will be in my name. Then we disappear." David watched in utter silence, his face ashen, knuckles white from gripping the chair. A single tear escaped Emma's eye, not of sadness but of mourning for the father she knew, the love she'd felt, the life now gone. Rachel Harper, calm as a surgeon mid-operation, said simply, "We've got what we need, and then some." She signaled her assistant, who backed up the recording on multiple secure devices. The proof wasn't a suspicion anymore, it was fact, recorded, irrefutable, devastating. The trap had sprung. With the recording in hand, time seemed to warp. For Emma and David, the next 48 hours were endless. They moved through the house like ghosts, haunted by the truth they carried, while Karen floated in smug triumph. The forced politeness, the fake smiles, were a grotesque theater where only two knew the final act would be a tragedy. Rachel Harper, the director of this dark play, handled the legal details. The asset transfer was staged, a legal mirage. Documents were drafted, emails sent to the bank, all to create a convincing paper trail. Karen, who'd been secretly checking David's emails, another violation they uncovered, saw the progress and could barely contain her glee. She became more affectionate with David, more attentive, a parody of a devoted wife that now seemed laughably transparent. The day of reckoning arrived. David, with a chilling calm that unnerved even Emma, announced at breakfast that they'd have a special dinner that night. "To celebrate," he said, looking at Karen. "To celebrate putting our house in order, securing our future." Karen's smile was radiant, her eyes gleaming with greed. "Oh, honey, you didn't have to. But it's wonderful." Ryan, there for breakfast, shot Karen a quick, victorious glance. He squeezed Emma's hand. "Your dad's a great man, babe, always thinking of family." Emma's stomach churned, but she managed to smile. Nausea was her constant companion now. Night fell, and the dining room was set with care. Candles flickered, the best china gleamed, the air was festive, but beneath it, tension crackled. Lily was sent to her grandparents for the night. Ryan, Emma, and Karen came down together, chatting loudly, the betrayers acting like they owned the place. David greeted them with impeccable courtesy, pouring wine. They toasted. "To family," David said, his gaze sliding from Karen to Ryan. There was a predatory glint in his eyes that they, blinded by arrogance, missed. Dinner passed in a haze of small talk. They discussed the weather, the Seahawks' latest game, Emma and Ryan's honeymoon plans. Every word was a lie, every smile a mask. Emma barely ate, feeling like a spectator at her own execution. She looked at the man she loved and the woman who'd raised her like a daughter, seeing only strangers, monsters in familiar skins. Finally, as the main course was cleared and before dessert was served, David stood. Without a word, he walked to the large flat-screen TV dominating the living room wall, adjacent to the dining area. Remote in hand, he turned it on. The screen flickered to life, not with a show or movie, but with a crystal-clear image of Emma's bedroom. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Karen and Ryan stared at the screen, confusion morphing into horror. The image was unmistakable, the bed, the door, the room they knew so well. And then they saw themselves. The video played, the hungry kiss, the laughter. Karen's voice, amplified through the speakers, rang out. "The old man's ready to sign the papers." Ryan's mocking laugh. "And the little princess." The blood drained from Karen's face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a wax figure melting under an invisible flame. Ryan jumped up, his chair scraping loudly, panic driving him to flee. "Sit down," David's voice sliced through, not loud but heavy with authority. Ryan froze, collapsing back into his chair. The video rolled on, relentless. Talk of Miami, the Caribbean. Then Karen's final confession, staring unknowingly at the camera. "Soon all his money will be in my name, then we disappear." The video stopped, freezing on their smiling faces, a permanent snapshot of their betrayal. The silence that followed was the heaviest Emma had ever felt, a silence of shock, shame, and the death of all their lies. David turned slowly, his face a mask of controlled contempt. He looked at Ryan. "You came into my home, ate at my table, asked for my daughter's hand. You played the part of a son-in-law and tried to steal everything I built for her." Then he faced Karen, and for the first time Emma saw raw pain crack his furious facade. "And you," he said, his voice breaking briefly, "you who I welcomed into my life, who I loved, you slept beside me every night while plotting to destroy me." Emma, silent until now, a witness to her own vengeance, found her voice. She stood, eyes locked on the pair. "And you, Karen," she said, her voice sharp, cutting. "You hugged me the night of my engagement, called me your daughter, while you were sleeping with my fiancé." That personal accusation broke Karen. Desperation flooded her face. Tears streamed, not of remorse, but of defeat. "David, I can explain. It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice a thread. Ryan tried denial. "This is a setup. That video's fake. Emma, you can't believe this." But it was too late. The evidence was crushing, the truth undeniable. "Get out," David said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Pack your things. I want you both out of my house, now." Karen sobbed hysterically. Ryan sat, paralyzed, as if unable to grasp the speed of his downfall. "Now!" David roared, and the command made them jump. What followed was chaotic and pitiful. Karen ran upstairs, throwing clothes into a suitcase. Ryan, dazed, was escorted out by a private security guard Rachel had insisted be on standby. When Karen came down, face swollen and red, she tried one last plea. "David, please, there's nothing left to say," he replied, turning his back. "My lawyer will be in touch. By the way, the transfer you were so excited about, it was a fake. You get nothing." The door slammed shut behind them, plunging the house into a deep, freeing silence. The theater was over. Emma looked at her father. He seemed to have aged a decade in one night. She approached and for the first time in days, hugged him without pretense. They stood there in the messy dining room, father and daughter, survivors of a war they never asked for. Justice was just beginning, but the hardest battle, the truth, had been won. The dust settled, but the house would never be the same. The silence after Ryan and Karen's exit wasn't peaceful. It was empty, the quiet of a battlefield after the bodies are cleared. For Emma and David, victory tasted like ashes. They'd exposed the truth, but it left scars that would never fully heal. The legal machine, cold and impersonal, began to grind. Rachel Harper, with the efficiency of a wartime general, took the offensive. Ryan was fired from David's company, not just for personal misconduct, but for breach of trust. A vague term to avoid immediate scandal, but clear enough to ruin his career in the industry. Karen received divorce papers and a restraining order barring her from the house or David. The transfer, the bait that lured her, was revealed as a sham. The prenup she'd carelessly signed years ago left her with a modest sum, a humiliating fraction of her greedy ambitions. But the legal consequences were just the skeleton of the story. The real pain was in the house. David sank into a silent grief. He didn't cry or yell, just wandered the house like a shadow, replaying every lie, kiss, and promise from Karen, now seen as cruel theater. Emma watched her father's pain, her own heart breaking again. Ryan's betrayal cut deep, but her father's crushed soul was a different kind of agony. Telling Lily was the hardest part. The teenager, caught in her bubble of normalcy, was blindsided by a conflict she didn't understand. Emma and David sat her down, struggling to explain the inexplicable. Her mother was gone. Her sister's fiancé was out of their lives. They spared her the worst details, using phrases like irreconcilable differences and serious mistakes. But Lily's sharp teenage instincts sensed the dark truth beneath the careful words. She withdrew, hurt and confused, torn between loyalty to her mother and the family she had left. The house, once a home, became a landscape of private sorrows. Rachel Harper suggested the next move, a bold step beyond the law. "The best way to protect against future slander is to control the narrative," she said in a meeting. "They'll try to play the victims. A well-documented attack is your best defense. With your permission, we can use this case, anonymized, as a study on emotional and financial fraud. It'll neutralize them and turn your pain into a warning for others." Emma hesitated, but saw the wisdom in it. She didn't want her pain to be a public spectacle, but using it to protect others resonated with the strength she'd found within herself. She agreed. David, wanting justice, consented. The story, carefully crafted by Rachel's PR team, hit legal and financial news outlets. No names were mentioned, but the details were vivid. The health scare transfer scam, the fiancé stepmother affair, the damning video. It went viral, a modern cautionary tale about family betrayal. Ryan and Karen, though unnamed, became pariahs. Rumors spread in their social circles. They vanished, swallowed by shame and ostracism. For Emma, the story's exposure was a turning point. The little Miss Perfect they mocked was gone. A resilient, pragmatic woman rose in her place. She threw herself into work, but differently. She took over the social projects division of her father's company. A neglected branch she revitalized with programs for women's financial and emotional independence. She began giving talks. Her first was to a small group at a non-profit, speaking rawly about how emotional dependency blinds, stressing the need for a strong sense of self. Her veiled story was powerful. She wasn't a victim, she was a survivor who turned scars into a roadmap for others. Time, a slow and imperfect healer, did its work. A year later, the house lost its mausoleum air. Lily's laughter echoed in the halls again. David, with Emma's support and Rachel's professional friendship, began to rediscover life. Their relationship grew beyond the case, from legal discussions to talks about loss and new beginnings. They found solace in each other, a partnership built on mutual understanding, not illusion. David was learning to smile again. Emma found peace, not from the absence of pain, but from embracing it. At a charity event she organized, a volunteer architect approached her. He didn't look at her with pity or awe, but with genuine, quiet interest. They talked for hours. Love, when it returned, came quietly, without grand promises, built on trust and respect. As for Ryan and Karen, they became ghosts, whispered rumors. Someone spotted Ryan driving for a rideshare app, his face hollow, eyes empty. Another claimed Karen was selling cosmetics door to door in a distant town, a shadow of her glamorous self. They didn't vanish to a life of luxury in the Caribbean, but to the exile of mediocrity, haunted by their own downfall. On a sunny September afternoon, 2 years after forgetting her laptop, Emma sat in the garden with David, Rachel, Lily, and her new love. Their laughter was genuine, hard-won. Emma looked at the clear Seattle sky, thinking that sometimes the world must collapse to be rebuilt stronger. She'd come home for a laptop, but found herself instead. That was a legacy no one could steal. And here we reach the end of this intense journey of betrayal, pain, and ultimately triumph. Stories like Emma's remind us that, even in the ashes of the greatest disappointment, we can find the strength to rise wiser and more resilient. If you were moved and gripped by this story as much as I was while telling it, please leave a like on this video. Your like is a huge encouragement and shows me we're on the right track. And if you're not yet part of our community, subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you won't miss any of our upcoming stories, and you'll greatly help me keep bringing content like this, crafted with so much dedication for you all. Thank you so much for your company, and until the next story.